It's Thursday, June 1. In the headlines, Prime Minister Andrew Holness says no cashless mandate for Jamaicans. In business news, gas prices up and diesel prices are down. Regionally, U.S. sanctions on Venezuela affecting Trinidad and Tobago. Internationally, U.S. House of Representatives votes yes on debt ceiling deal. And in sports, sprint legend Usain Bolt obtains court order in SSL fraud case. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. If you keep up with the global news or just observe the happenings on social media, you will see that the world is utilizing more digital means of payment and service transactions. Jamaica has been moving towards digitalization in the public sector. However, Prime Minister Andrew Holness says there is no cashless mandate for Jamaicans. He was speaking at a digital transformation forum held by the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, at the AC Hotel in Kingston on Wednesday.
There is no attempt by the government to remove cash, meaning paper money, from the system. Just stop for one moment. Just be rational. Why would the government spend billions of dollars to change currency to a new, durable banknote that we don't have to be changing it ever so often, only to turn around and take it out of the system? Don't you see it is stupidness?
He notes concerns about the digital currencies, but explained that investments continue to be made both in the technology and the currencies themselves, and pointed out that some of the threats that exist in digital currency are those that also exist in cash.
It is about providing and delivering better services to our people, increasing our communication with our citizens and customers, and serving our citizens' customers' needs by providing better and improved experiences when they do business with us. Importantly, it is about inclusion. Digital transformation can be a powerful equalizer through enabling financial inclusion and educational inclusion.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister says as the national ID is rolled out, increased focus will be given to national digital payment infrastructure. The central bank's digital currency, Jamdex, was launched in 2022.
The reason we are implementing these things is to make the lives of citizens easier. If you choose to use them, hooray to you. If you choose not to use them, it is your choice. There will be strong safeguards to ensure that your personal data and information is properly secured and used for the purposes that the citizen has provided it for.
Mr. Holness said that no one will be left behind, pointing out that many persons are not digital natives and will require assistance and support in conducting transactions. The police will soon be called in to probe the leak of the Caribbean Secondary Education Certificate Mathematics Paper 2 examination, which was held in May. After news broke out that the exam paper had been leaked before the sitting, the Caribbean Examinations Council pointed to Jamaica as the source of the breach, despite initial claims that it had occurred in Guyana. CXC Registrar and Chief Executive Officer Dr. Wayne Wesley refused to name the center or even the parish in Jamaica where the leak occurred. However, PBCJ understands that the police's Counter-Terrorism and Organized Crime Investigations Branch, CTOC, will be given the case in a few days. Police Commissioner Major General Anthony Anderson says a new workforce management solution system to calculate overtime payment is being installed. Speaking at a recent Police Federation's annual conference in Trelawney, Major Anderson assured members of the police force that they will receive overtime payments.
My thing to you is, do not be concerned. You're going to be paid your money. You're going to be paid your money. You earned it, you must be paid for it.
The issue of overtime payment to members of the force has been a hot-button issue for the Jamaica Police Federation, which argued that its members have been forced to work long hours without the compensation. The Federation had sued the government, claiming that rank-and-file members were owed billions of dollars in outstanding overtime payments.
We had a team that was working non-stop on getting this ready. When the vendors who sold the system, when we were talking about timelines, they had no inkling. They said it cannot be done in the time frame. But I must say we did get it in place. It's not 100% yet because there are some manual parts to it. There's a digital part and there's some manual parts, and we'll continue improving on it. Now, the records of overtime that have been earned since April 1 are there.
In ruling on the matter, the court ordered that by March 31 this year, the government should implement a system to capture overtime hours by members of the JCF. Jamaicans are being reminded that tobacco use remains a major public health concern. The Caribbean Public Health Agency warns that there is no safe level of exposure to tobacco smoke. The CARPA says cigarette smoking is the #1 risk factor for lung cancer. The agency says using other tobacco products such as cigars or pipes increases this disease's risk. Additionally, second-hand smoke exposure causes stroke, lung cancer and coronary heart disease in adults, and acute respiratory infections and severe asthma in children. In her World No Tobacco Day message on Wednesday, CARPA's Executive Director, Dr. Joy St. John, said preventing tobacco products use among youth is critical. This year, World No Tobacco Day focused on grow food, not tobacco. In the business report, gas prices are up. Find out by how much from our reporter, Danita Rodney.
According to the latest ex-refinery costs from Petrojam, motorists should see an increase at the pumps in the price of gasoline and a decrease in the price of diesel effective Thursday, June 1. With both grades of gasoline up by $1.80, 87-octane gasoline will sell for $170.45 per liter, while 90-octane gasoline will sell for $173.98 per liter. Down $4.50, automotive diesel fuel will sell for $165.62 per liter, ultra-low sulfur diesel will sell for $176.37 per liter, and kerosene will sell for $176.47 per liter. Propane liquid petroleum will sell for $59.35 per liter, down by 25 cents, and butane liquid petroleum will sell for $67.33 per liter after a decrease of 25 cents. Remember, marketing companies and retailers will add their respective markups to these prices. The Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, in conjunction with the Inter-American Development Bank (IDB), has launched a MSME Business Roadshow. According to Dwayne Haynes, Director of Technical Coordination and Monitoring in the Ministry, the roadshow, which begins in July, will provide MSMEs with capacity-building support, access to public services, increased awareness of financing opportunities, as well as seek to foster greater connectivity between markets and customers. Now for your market updates. In foreign exchange trading for Wednesday, May 31, the US dollar sold for an average of $155.82. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $115.22. The pound sterling traded for $193.31, and the euro sold for an average of $170.92. In JSE trading, the JSE index advanced by 696 points. The junior market index advanced by 22 points. The combined market index advanced by 854 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index advanced by 112 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 108 stocks, of which 64 advanced, 31 declined, and 13 traded firm. Stocks advanced for Access Financial Services Limited, Barita Investments Limited, and Caribbean Assurance Brokers Limited. Stocks declined for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, CAC 2000 Limited, and Cargo Handlers Limited. Trading firm were 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited Verbal Preference, AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, and Siboney Group Limited. The overall volume leaders were Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited with over 13 million units, Future Energy Source Company Limited ordinary shares with over 5 million units, and Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with over 4 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Calypso Macro Index Fund posted 14 shares. Zero securities traded on the Barbados Stock Exchange. In regional business, in his second budget communication since taking office, Bahamian Prime Minister Philip Davis outlined the government's plans to cut costs, raise revenue, and address pressing matters. Jamila Misek has more.
Government will reduce travel expenditure, one of the many revelations during the 2023 communication by Prime Minister Philip Davis. The budget, which highlighted government's efforts to tackle national security and immigration, includes funding for a new shantytown task force. Davis also spoke to addressing crime in the country, including the protection of women.
We have allocated funding to build a women's shelter, and we are increasing legal aid support for victims of domestic violence.
As it relates to development in the Family Islands, Davis says,
We have allocated $4.7 million to continue an employment program in Grand Bahama. As part of our focus on transitioning to renewable energy, we have allocated $22 million for the adoption of solar technologies on sites in Mequana, Inagua, Crooked Island, Acklins, and Long Key.
The budget also outlines plans to increase food security, including funding for the expansion of BAMSI.
My government will be introducing a new national school breakfast program. We will also establish a special food assistance program to provide funding for organizations operating feeding programs for vulnerable people.
The Davis administration will also seek to make healthcare more affordable by consolidating national health insurance and the prescription drug plan into an overall health policy.
We will be supporting the creation of the first ever national organs transplant program.
In terms of home ownership, Davis says government is extending the first home exemption benefits for owner-occupied residents up to triplexes, adding that concessions for housing projects have been expanded to non-government entities for projects with a maximum value of $300,000 in construction cost per unit.
In international business, Wall Street fell after strong labor market data rattled investors.
U.S. stocks dropped on Wednesday. Unexpectedly strong data on the labor market raised concerns the Federal Reserve may have to continue hiking interest rates. The Dow fell 0.4%, the S&P 500 dropped 0.6%, as did the Nasdaq. The Labor Department released data indicating U.S. job openings unexpectedly rose in April, according to the so-called JOLTS report, pointing to resilience in the labor market that suggests pressure on both wages and inflation. Baird Managing Director and Market Strategist Michael Antonelli said the economy could actually be strengthening.
This is what the Federal Reserve is grappling with. Is the economy actually hot? Is the economy actually accelerating and not declining? Whereas this push and pull in the markets of recession, no recession. If job openings accelerate, that means the economy is actually probably accelerating and not receding. So JOLTS going up definitely puts a question mark over my head, which is economic data actually getting better? And if it's getting better, does that put the Federal Reserve back on hike duty, right? Does that put them back on, wow, we may actually need to consider another hike? So that's really what's important now, especially for, not only retail investors, but institutional investors.
Futures traders raised the probability of a quarter-point rate hike at the Fed's June policy meeting to 70% following the release of the jobs data. But that was cut back to about 30% after two Fed officials said they think the central bank should keep rates where they are at least through the next meeting. The Labor Department's closely watched May unemployment report due on Friday could decide whether a rate hike occurs. Stocks on the move included Advance Auto Parts, which plunged 35% after the auto parts retailer cut its full-year forecast. Also, Intel, which climbed 5%, as the chipmaker said it was on track to hit the upper end of its second quarter revenue forecast.
In market data for oil steadied on Thursday as a potential pause in U.S. interest rate hikes and the passing of a crucial vote on the U.S. debt ceiling bill were offset by a report of rising inventories in the world's biggest oil consumer. Brent crude futures fell 17 cents to $72.43 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate crude slipped by 16 cents to $67.93. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Denida Rodney.
In regional news, Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, says United States sanctions on Venezuela are affecting Trinidad and Tobago's energy deals with that country. Even as he confirms this, he assured that government continues to make progress. Terry-Ann Brown-Campbell has the story.
According to Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, the United States government's continued sanctions on Venezuela is negatively impacting this country.
I went to Washington and I met with some advisors to the president and some senior executives there. And I did tell them, what I should tell you now, that Trinidad and Tobago is suffering from collateral damage of United States foreign policy on Venezuela.
Dr. Rowley noted progress has been slow in getting the allowances needed from the U.S. to allow this country to monetize the resources of the Loran, Manatee and Dragon fields. The first field is in territory shared by this country and Venezuela, and the second is solely owned by Venezuela.
The first hurdle was crossed when we got the Americans to agree to give us an OFAC license. It involved Minister Young traveling to Washington at my instructions and guidance probably 8 times, and myself 3 or 4 times. We've met virtually everybody who's involved in the government of the United States and on the other side as well. We finally got an OFAC license, but the license has a condition on it, which the Venezuelans find unacceptable. We're working on that too.
An OFAC license is authorization from the U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control to engage in a transaction which might otherwise be prohibited.
And to allow Trinidad and Tobago, which Shell as the operator, to proceed to take steps to extract 27% of the Loran Manatee field. It requires serious engineering work and so on before. So it takes some time between the decision and the actual extraction. Shell has agreed to fund that arrangement, and of course it will involve some significant, the last time we approximated it, it was in the order of $500 million US.
The Prime Minister noted this figure covers the resources Shell will need to put out to begin extracting gas. Terry-Ann Brown-Campbell, DTT News.
In the Bahamas, Prime Minister Philip Davis has revealed that the country's revenue is up thanks to a significant increase in tax collections. Bethany McDermott has that breakdown.
The Prime Minister telling Parliament the $45.2 million that will be borrowed is to offset budget shortfalls, adding to the country's current debt of $11.6 billion. Prime Minister Philip Davis tabled a resolution in Parliament Wednesday.
Proceeds of said borrowing being used for the purposes of deferring expenditure in the 2023-2024 estimates of revenue and expenditure.
The government is forecasting a deficit of $389.5 million in the approaching fiscal year as it relates to this current fiscal year. For the first 9 months of the 2022-2023 fiscal budget, Davis projects a deficit of $164.3 million, which shows a change of $395 million.
At the end of March 2023, domestic currency debt accounted for $5.9 billion, or 53.4% of total central government debt.
Davis reiterated the debt-to-GDP ratio is trending downward.
To date, our total revenue stands at 73.9% of the budget forecast after 9 months, only 9 months.
Tax revenue also saw a considerable increase, which the Prime Minister revealed contributed significantly to the increase in total revenue. He says tax collections increased by $291.3 million, which totaled $1.8 billion during this fiscal period.
Departure tax collections increased by $80 million and totaled $128.6 million. Excise duties firmed by $63.5 million and totaled $180.1 million. Customs and other import duties improved by $7.8 million.
The Grenadian Ministry of Health and Wellness has reported that the number of dengue cases have been continuously increasing based on data acquired over the last 3 weeks.
The Ministry of Health and Wellness reports that the number of dengue cases have been continuously increasing based on data acquired during the past 3 weeks. Acting Chief Medical Officer Dr. Sean Charles says in epidemiological week number 18 and 19, there were 20 and 39 reported cases respectively, while Epi week number 20 recorded a total of 79 new cases and 2 hospitalizations. According to him, this represents a 100% increase from the previous week, and it points to what can only be described as a steady increase in the outbreak of cases. The CMO added that while public education efforts and vector control measures have intensified to assist with the control and prevention of further increases, citizens must also play their part, taking all necessary preventative measures. He said, and I quote, "We are reminding members of the public that the situation is very, very serious, and as such, it is extremely important for them to protect themselves by using approved insect repellents, mosquito nets, and wearing long-sleeve clothing," unquote. Health officials say it is extremely important that people ensure their surroundings are kept clean to destroy existing and potential mosquito breeding sites. The public is reminded that all persons experiencing dengue fever-like symptoms such as joint pain, fever, headaches, intense abdominal pain, and bleeding gums should seek immediate medical attention and get tested. Symptoms usually begin 4 to 10 days after infection, and infected persons usually get better in 1 to 2 weeks. However, the CMO warns that dengue can be severe and even lead to death. Persons who have been previously infected by the virus are at most risk of developing severe dengue. Dr. Charles said the treatment for dengue is based on presenting symptoms and
in international news, the United States House of Representatives has passed a bipartisan bill to suspend the nation's debt ceiling, which currently stands at $31.4 trillion. Al Jazeera's Alan Fisher reports.
Passed.
The U.S. government has been running on financial fumes for 5 months. It would have finally run out of money to pay the bills on June 5th, but the first step in stopping any debt default has passed the House after a contentious vote.
I wanted to make history. I wanted to do something no other Congress has done. That for the first time in quite some time, we'd spend less than we spent the year before.
McCarthy negotiated a deal with US President Joe Biden to avert a financial crisis. But some in his own party were angered there weren't deeper cuts to government spending and stronger efforts to cut the deficit. That anger brought a no vote from them, and it was directed at the leader of their party in the House.
I'm trying to figure out exactly what conservatives should be happy about.
Some Democrats were upset too at the cuts that had been agreed, but there was still enough of them to push through the bill.
From the very beginning, House Democrats were clear that we would not allow extreme MAGA Republicans to default on our debt, crash the economy, or trigger a job-killing recession.
A US debt default would create economic tremors which could spark a recession at home and real issues globally. One expert says when the deal is agreed, the continuing problem of America's debt won't go away.
And the big drivers of debt were taken off the table at the beginning. What we call Social Security, aid for the elderly, Medicare, health care for the elderly, Medicaid, health care for the poor. None of those were touched. And if those are the drivers of federal debt, the problem continues.
This was the highest hurdle that the bill to suspend the debt limit was likely to face, getting through the Republican-controlled House. Now that it's done that, it will go to the Senate and then to the President's desk for signing probably on Friday. Now, both sides will claim victory for this, but the biggest fallout is likely to be for Kevin McCarthy, and he'll face calls from inside his own party to be replaced as Speaker. But that is another Capitol Hill drama for another day. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, Washington.
In sports, Jamaican sprint legend Usain Bolt has obtained a court order for 2 banks to disclose the transaction history of accounts owned by Jeanan Panton, the only person charged in the $3 billion fraud at Stocks and Securities Limited, SSL. The request comes 4 months after the law firm, in an official letter to the manager at SSL, gave the institution an ultimatum to repay the monies by Friday, January 27, 2023, failing which they had promised to take legal actions against the company and its directors, including civil and criminal procedures. The application is being made by Welden, Bolt's holding company. Former West Indies captain Jimmy Adams will not continue in his role as director of cricket when his contract expires on June 30. Mr. Adams, in a release on Wednesday, said it was an honor to have been involved in the ongoing evolution of Cricket West Indies. The 55-year-old also wished the administration well amidst what he calls regional and global challenges. The appointments of Darren Sammy and Andre Coley as white and red ball coaches were part of the last rite of passage for Jimmy Adams, who spent 6 years as the director of cricket. And that's the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, we are the People's Station.